purpose of engagement so you understand why we did invite you here tonight. We'll go through some meeting agreements, and then we'll get into the meat of the evening by hearing from city staff, Laura Horner and Ellen Bialis, who coordinate the garbage and recycling program. And we may have an additional person joining us here, our Sustainability Commission Chair, Tim Sandry. So we will hear a presentation, and then we'll also allow plenty of time for questions and answers to get things clarified from the presentation that you hear this evening. And then we'll open it up for public feedback and comments so that you can share your reactions and ideas with the project team here tonight. And then we'll close and talk about next steps. So just to review here, our purpose of our engagement tonight and really what that means when we talk about engagement. Here at the city, we use what's called IAP2. And what this shows you through this process when we say engagement is, you know, what does that really mean to you? How will your voice be used in this process? And so tonight we fall under this consult area right here on the spectrum. And this is where we're getting your feedback and hearing what you have to say about the approach to managing the bulky item disposal in a sustainable way. So as part of Involve, we are here to obtain the feedback from folks on the call this evening, and also through our online engagement tools. And as part of this process, our promise to you is to keep you informed, and you will hear a lot of information this evening. And we do want to listen to everybody on the call and acknowledge your comments and questions. And so to that extent, we are recording this evening so everyone from the project team, even if they aren't on the call tonight, they can hear what you have to say, and that we do capture your thoughts accurately as well. All recommendations will be made to the Sustainability Commission and city staff for final recommendation to the City Council. So it is the City Council who makes the final decision. And just so everybody knows, those Sustainability Commission and City Council meetings are open to the public. And you can watch them live or watch them after the fact, whatever's convenient for you. So I do encourage you to join those if you like. At this time, I do want to point out on the screen, if you've not used WebEx before, if you hover your mouse over the left-hand side of the screen in the middle, you'll see a plus button and a minus button. I can't show that to you here while I'm presenting, but then you could expand the font or the size of it so that you can see it better, whatever's easiest for you. So I just want to make that comment there. Moving into our meeting agreements, we establish these at the beginning of most of our meetings, whether we hold those internally or with the public, such as this. We do ask for everyone to be respectful during our time this evening and be honest with comments. That is really important to us as we're listening to your input. And just a reminder that everybody on the call has good intent. We are here to listen to everyone's perspective on the call. Even if you don't agree with an idea that's being shared, we have in our minds that the intent is good for everybody on their ideas. Please do have an open mind. We are here to listen to everybody from the community, and since everybody has different backgrounds, we are hearing different perspectives. If you've not used WebEx before, it's very similar to Zoom. So you will find in the lower right-hand corner a chat box for you to submit any kind of comments or questions. You may actually already see some messages in here from staff, but this is here for you to use during your time this evening. And everything that is submitted in that chat box will be saved and shared with the project team and the Sustainability Commission. So that does include comments if you send those privately to another person. Those are all saved inside there. So all public comments and private comments will be saved. So you can make your comments here or any questions as well. And please do keep your microphone muted if you're not speaking, just to limit background noise and distractions. I think we're all pretty used to that by this time. but sometimes you're not aware you're making background noise. So staff does have the ability to mute you, just so you know. If we do have any folks, I can't see everybody here, but if we have any folks joining by telephone tonight, you do have the ability to mute yourself on your phone as well. Depending on your device, you can just hit the mute button on your screen. Okay. So how we're going to participate tonight, as I mentioned, you do have the chat box. So through the course of the evening, you can make your comments here or ask questions. Once we reach the period at the end of the presentation, we're going to pause for any questions from everyone. If you have any clarifying questions about the presentation that you just saw, we'll answer those for everybody before we go into the public comment period for people to share their feedback with everybody on what they had just heard. So we don't look like we have quite the numbers that we were expecting so far this evening, but that may change. We do want to limit comments to 2 minutes. So I will monitor that during the feedback time. And so if we do have time to go back to people to hear from them again, if they have additional comments, we will do that. But please limit it to 2 minutes so that everybody can be heard. And maybe during the presentation, you can jot down some thoughts and ideas so that you have that in mind to share and we can make the best use of our time. We do have a 5-second rule here. As we all know, when we're on these virtual meetings, you might get more than one person jumping in at a time. Just allow a little bit of space there before somebody jumps in. If we do have 2 people jumping in at the same time, I will make sure we go back and we have everybody has an opportunity to share and take turns. So we're very happy that people have joined us this evening, and we do wish to hear from everyone. If you're someone that doesn't wish to speak on the call, we will share contact information at the end. So if you feel more comfortable making a phone call or sharing via email, we encourage you to make comments that way as well. So we do have a presentation here this evening. I am going to turn it over here. And do we have, Tim is with us. So we have our Sustainability Commission Chair, Tim Sandry, with us this evening, and he's going to kick it off for us. Tim, are you ready there? Tim Sandry, are you with us?
Tim, you are muted.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Been having a few technical difficulties here tonight, so okay, so let me get started here. So let's see here. I need to get down. Okay, so here we go. All right, so okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to get myself situated here. So the curbside. So we know that the curbside collection program is a very popular program. Sorry. All right. As Barb said, I'm chair of the Bloomington Sustainability Commission. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, the Sustainability Commission was created by the City Council about 4 years ago. And essentially our charter is to influence the behavior of everyone living and working in the city of Bloomington so that we live our lives more sustainably in the areas of greenhouse gas emissions, i.e. Climate change, surface and groundwater, preserving and restoring our natural resources, such as the Minnesota River Valley, And last but not least, to reduce the negative ecological impact of our solid waste stream. So tonight we're talking about the very popular curbside cleanup program, which is a very challenging program to operate. The City Council has been discussing how to make changes to the way bulky items are managed for several years now. The curbside cleanup program is costly at about $1 million per year. It is becoming increasingly challenging for haulers to accomplish, and most importantly, it's not environmentally sustainable. In 2019, the City Council requested that the Sustainability Commission look at the potential opportunities to reduce the ecological impact of the curbside cleanup program. And as a result, the Commission created a work group made up of both commissioners and staff to develop and evaluate alternatives, which you will see, which we'll be talking about tonight. The Commission also contracted for a study to take a look at the current curbside cleanup program to determine the extent to which those items that are set out at the curb could actually be reused or recycled. And the data from this study provided the foundation for the potential and we've been working with staff to come up with potential options, and we need to make a recommendation to City Council, and that brings us to today. So what you are going to see is what we are expecting to propose, and we'd like to get your feedback. So next slide, please. So how did we get here? The purpose of the curbside cleanup program has always been to keep the city of Bloomington clean by providing residents with a method for disposing bulky items that are difficult to get rid of, like couches, mattresses, refrigerators, dishwashers, and so on. We do this to ensure that they don't end up staying in backyards or getting dumped in parks or down in the Minnesota River Valley, which in the past was not uncommon. The program was started in the 1960s and was originally part of a citywide neighborhood cleanup program called Clean Up, Paint Up, Fix Up. This program was designed to help beautify the city and was originally paid for by citywide general taxes. That program was discontinued in the 1980s due to budget constraints. And in the late 1990s, the program was restarted and the costs were paid by a fee to all residential properties. Due to the cost and environmental footprint, the city placed limits on the amount of stuff residents could set out in 2018 and strictly enforces them. These limits have helped to reduce the cost and the amount of waste generated, but it is still not a sustainable program financially or ecologically. Next slide, please. This slide lists the primary ecological drivers for making a change. This program costs a lot and generates a lot of waste. To put it in perspective, in 2019, the city's residential garbage program, the weekly garbage pickup, generated just over 17,500 tons of garbage in an entire year, and that's not including the curbside cleanup. In 2019, the haulers picked up 1,500 tons of garbage during the cleanup. That's roughly 9% of the weight of our residential garbage collection for an entire year, but only over 5 days. In addition, landfills generate huge amounts of methane, which is 84 times a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon. And finally, the carbon footprint of just getting the trash to the landfill is extremely high, approximately 60 tons in the case of the curbside cleanup program. In fact, the 2019 study I referenced earlier concluded that all these items that are going into the landfill, about 35% of them could likely be reused or recycled or even put in the weekly trash cart. And so these pictures here that you see on the slide show some common examples of things that are put out the curb. And if you look closely, they don't look like trash. Many of these items are things that people no longer want and don't know what else to do with them, like a kiddie pool. What do you do with the kiddie pool after the kids are too old for it? Or the bicycle after the kids have left home? Or what do you do when you replace your patio furniture? So we are not the only ones that are concerned about this. Hennepin County also recognizes these issues and actually has a goal of composting or recycling 75% of all waste within the next 10 years. All right, next slide, please. Oops, sorry. Okay, so this slide lists the primary ecological drivers for making a change. Sorry, got on the wrong slide here. Okay, so here are the MPCA. Here is the MPCA waste hierarchy. We've always heard about the reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy. Well, the MPCA is looking at this a little more broadly, and in addition to reduce, recycle, reduce, reuse, and recycle, they've added composting, waste to energy, and landfilling. And you'll notice here that landfilling is the least preferred, and reducing is the most preferred. And then the rest are in between there. So some of you may be wondering, so what's different about this than the trash that we put out at the curb each week? So the weekly trash is taken to the Hennepin Energy Recovery Facility, also known as HERC, which is in downtown Minneapolis. And the HERC, and that waste is incinerated and creates steam heat for downtown Minneapolis, or it's converted to electricity and sold on the grid. Unfortunately, this facility is not designed to take bulky items like couches and refrigerators and such that are put out the curbside cleanup program. Next slide, please. Because the items collected during the curbside cleanup program don't go to the HERC to be incinerated, they are typically landfilled in a facility like the Burnsville Sanitary landfill, which happened in 2019. And the volume of that, of the curbside cleanup program is similar to 100 garbage trucks. So every year we would be sending 100 garbage trucks and burying them in or the equivalent of 100 garbage trucks and burying that in the Burnsville landfill or similar landfill. And so this visualization, which many of you have seen, was created by Bloomington staff and shows the probable peak size of the proposed Burnsville Sanitary landfill expansion, which when full will be the highest elevation in either Burnsville or Bloomington and will likely be visible from the southern parts of Bloomington. And as many of you probably know, the city of Bloomington is very much opposed to this expansion. But so here's the conundrum. We don't want this trash mountain, which would be visible from our southern border, but at the same time, we need some place to dispose of the 2,000 tons of trash each year as part of the cleanup, curbside cleanup program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Horner, who is our solid waste coordinator and solid waste expert, to talk about what we've learned through our engagement process. Laura, take it away.
Thank you, Tim, for kicking things off tonight and providing more background on some of the environmental issues related to the cleanup that has led us to why we're here today. To begin with, I think Tim has already covered this, but briefly, I will review a background. We've been studying the curbside cleanup program for quite a few years by the direction of City Council. We did quite a robust study in 2019 of over 2,000 curbside cleanup piles to see what was made up in the current piles. We also did quite a bit of research to come up with some different options that we could consider for managing bulky items in Bloomington. That recommendation was shared with Council last spring. And then this past spring in March and April, we did a pretty significant community engagement campaign to bring that proposal to the community and get some feedback. We held 2 community listening sessions that I can go into more detail in a few slides here. But after that community engagement was conducted, we did spend quite a bit of time reviewing the feedback received, and we reconvened the Sustainability Commission Working Group to kind of refine our recommendation that we are going to share with you this evening. This recommendation has been presented to the Joint City Council and Sustainability Commission Working Group this past month as well. And this brings us to where we are today to get this information back to you for your feedback. Next slide, please, Barb.
Laura, I'm just going to state your voice is going a little bit in and out. So if you have a better way with your microphone there.
Oh, sure. My apologies. Is that a little bit better?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Sure. So as a reminder, this is our original proposal that was presented to the community back in April. And that proposal included providing residents with 2 vouchers for the collection of bulky items from the curb. A resident could schedule that pickup throughout the year. And it was also recommended to hold 2 community cleanup drop-off events each year where residents could bring a variety of items to a central location to be disposed of in a single day. This was, again, the recommendations that were presented to the community this past April. Next slide, please. So in April, as I mentioned, we did conduct some fairly robust community engagement. Our Let's Talk Bloomington page had over 4,500 visitors to that page to learn about the recommendation. We had 2,200 people read some of those project documents, and 1,400 people took a survey. And then we held 2 citywide listening sessions. We had 66 attendees at those listening sessions where we received feedback, as we are doing again this evening. And then we also held a few focused conversations with different stakeholders in the community to gather more input, and received direct phone calls and emails from several residents. Next slide, please. So at this time, we want to share with you some of that feedback we heard before we provide you with our updated recommendation this evening. So I'll structure this in some of the concerns we heard, the support we heard, as well as some suggestions. So here, where we're listing some of those concerns, I think that the number 1 concern that we heard from residents was concern about vehicle access, not having a sufficient vehicle to bring items to that drop-off to a central location as was recommended. We also heard from folks concerns related to sustainability. People have felt that the proposal would potentially result in less reuse and recycling than our current program has. We also heard concerns about rummaging, or in other words, a lot of support for rummaging in our current curbside cleanup program, and some concerns about eliminating that aspect of the program for a variety of reasons. And just in general, we heard that there is support for our current program. And lastly, some concerns related to improper disposal that might result from changes to our current curbside cleanup program. So with that, Barb, I can share some of the support. So on the flip side, we also heard support from residents about sustainability, that new proposal would result in more reuse and recycling and less landfilling. And we also found support for the idea of vouchers. And I think within that, the support for vouchers is tied to flexible timing. Residents preferred that a new program would allow for flexibility in disposing of those items throughout the year. And we also heard support for a reduced program cost in that proposal. And I'm not going to go into each comment here. However, if people are really interested in the feedback received, we have a very in-depth report on our survey and community engagement that's available online. We're happy to answer more questions about that as well. And then lastly, we did receive suggestions from residents, just to name a few, just some ideas about how we might be able to keep our current curbside cleanup program and make some changes to reduce the costs and encourage reuse, including potentially holding the cleanup every other year, or allowing more time for residents to set that material out earlier for reuse, and maybe trying to coincide it with our citywide garage sale that is held by an outside organization. And again, I'm happy to answer more questions or go into more detail if people have questions later on. Next slide, please, Barb. So in addition to the feedback that we received, we also took some time to do more observations on how other cities are handling their drop-off events, because we did receive quite a bit of feedback related to the idea of drop-off events. So city staff visited drop-offs held in Brooklyn Park, Maplewood, Hopkins, Plymouth, St. Louis Park, and St. Paul this spring to really learn from how other cities are holding these events and what some of the challenges are and what works well. We found that most of those drop-offs collect general refuse, electronics, appliances, and some other specialty items for recycling. There was not a lot of reuse at these drop-offs. And we also were particularly intrigued by drop-off events held in the city of Brooklyn Park. Their drop-off event collects recyclables only. And we did find that there was quite a short wait time to use that drop-off event. And they did have a pretty high attendance level. And Brooklyn Park does pair that drop-off event with a separate every other year curbside pickup event. We did find that some drop-off events did have fairly long wait times, and it seemed that that was often tied to the collection of general refuse at those drop-off events. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ellen Bialis, who will kind of frame us again in what we're trying to do with making some of these changes and share the recommendations.
Thanks, Laura. Again, I'm Ellen Bialis, and I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works for Bloomington. And obviously, you can see we received a lot of feedback through the different engagement activities that we held earlier this year, and also learned quite a lot by observing what other cities did. So we took all of that information and went back to sort of what we were really trying to achieve with this proposed plan. We took a look and said, you know, we really want there to be good environmental benefits from doing the program. We want it to be cost effective and provide a high quality service to people. We do want to try and maintain accessibility for those without vehicles or who might have limited mobility. We did want to find some way to have some accessibility for residents who do live in multifamily buildings. And of course, importantly in all of this is trying to create a clean city and maintain that clean image that Bloomington has always had. So with that, we went back to the drawing board a little bit, taking into account what we heard from the public and put together what we are wanting to propose now as a new program. And I'm going to talk through each of the program pieces with you. So Barb, if you could advance to the next slide. So the new program has several different parts to it, and I'll try to talk through them each a little bit individually. But essentially, there's about 5 different pieces to what we would recommend. We do recommend holding kind of a reimagined curbside cleanup event every other year. But that event would really limit the number of items that are accepted. So any item that's small that can fit in your regular garbage container should really go in your regular garbage container and not be put out for the curbside cleanup. We think doing a cleanup event kind of similar to what we've had in the past kind of addresses some of those concerns the residents had about access, kind of keeps the program convenient, allows some opportunity for rummaging, and it does help reduce the cost of the program since it's only held every other year. And it will help address some of our concerns about the level of material going to the landfill, since smaller items that can be put in the garbage cart will be put in the garbage cart, which will be sent to our waste to energy facility with our regular garbage pickup. In addition to that element, we would hold a drop-off event for recyclable materials, which would be held every year. That element would allow multifamily residents to participate in some recycling activities. And it may also encourage reuse of some items that we could collect at that drop-off site. In addition to those 2 elements, we would hold what we're calling a monthly curbside pickup for reusable and recyclable items only. We've been talking with a few vendors in town who do reuse and recycling of certain household items. And this would be something where people could call and schedule an appointment for this organization on a monthly basis to come by and pick up those events from people at their curb. Again, this kind of addresses the concern we heard about residents not having access to vehicles. It also provides some convenience for residents. And I think we felt that this would be a good way to address some concerns that residents may have about needing to hold on to items and wait for an every other year cleanup event. In addition to all of those items, the city would hold a few additional activities throughout the year. One of the things that we've considered is holding some swap type events where people could come and exchange certain types of items like sports equipment or gardening tools or toys in an effort to further promote reuse of those items and provide some different options for people rather than just throwing them out at, kind of during the cleanup time. And then overall, we heard from folks that we really need to do a better job of providing more education about how and where people can recycle and reuse their items. And so one of the things that we've decided to do is to really refocus efforts on how do we get better information out to the community about those opportunities for reuse and recycling. So those are kind of the key recommendations of the program that we see going forward. We think it provides different opportunities for people both to get rid of items that really have lived their life and now need to be moved along, but also puts a greater emphasis on reuse and recycling and trying to get as much out of those items as we can before they make it to the landfill. So Barb, can you move to the next slide? And We took a look again at what our values were and where this proposal kind of met up with the proposal that we had considered previously and for our current program. And we do think that this reimagined cleanup held every other year perhaps checks off a few more boxes than we had even with the original program change that we had proposed. We feel that it provides a little more accessibility for those without vehicles. There would be some accessibility for folks who are in multifamily buildings. Based on kind of our projections of what we might be able to do for recycling, we feel like we can probably get some more materials recycled. Again, doing more to reuse and recycle reduces our carbon footprint. And we also feel that it's still possible for us doing these elements to reduce that cost for our residents. So we feel that this proposal is potentially a good fit for residents and covers some of the areas that we heard when we talked with the community previously. And so with that, I think, Barb, maybe we will open it up to some questions.
Yeah, and thanks, Ellen, for reviewing that, and Laura and Tim for your input here and sharing the proposed plan with everyone. So at this time, we'll open this up for clarifying questions in regard to what you just heard on the presentation before we get into the time of submitting your feedback and reactions to what you just heard. So if anybody has any clarifying questions about what you heard, maybe misunderstood something, if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask those. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have a question.
I was wondering if you could clarify more about the monthly pickup option and what that would look like and what types of materials would be picked up with that.
Sure. So I think how that might look, as Ellen mentioned, we have spoken with a few vendors that recommended this as an option for us to divert some more of those items on more of a regular basis rather than just during the curbside cleanup. And that recommendation came as a way to offer, it would be potentially one specific day each month that residents could really count on as the day for them to put out those reusable or recyclable bulky items and schedule that pickup in advance. So some examples of those items that you could set out would include furniture that is still in good condition for donation. So that might be a couch, a chair, an end table, a coffee table, items like that. They also would collect reusable building materials. So any good wood or windows or doors that you had after a reconstruction project, those sorts of items could be set out, or larger pieces of scrap metal, maybe a couch with a hide-a-bed if that was in bad condition, but that scrap metal is still valuable, that might be something they would pick up as well. So they did feel that there would be quite a few different sorts of items that we could collect through that curbside program. Does that kind of clarify? Or if you have any other questions, please feel free to let us know.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Joe, for that question. Anybody else have any clarifying questions at this time?
I think I do. Could you clarify, is this program open to every resident in Bloomington, regardless of the type of living facility they live in? So in other words, single family homes to condominiums or townhomes, and if so, would they be charged equally?
Sure. Now, Ellen, I don't know if you feel you could answer this question.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So not all elements of the program will be available to everybody. Those residents that participate in our garbage and recycling program would be able to participate in the every other year cleanup and in the monthly reuse and recycling pickup. However, apartment and condominium residents would be able to participate in the recycling drop-off event every year. And there would likely be some small charge for recycling some materials that those folks would pay. Apartment residents would also be able to participate in the swap events that we would be holding as well. So they would have some access and participation to those events, but the curbside program and the monthly pickup for reusable items would be basically for those residences that are a part of the city's current garbage and recycling program.
And each is charged according to what is available to them, correct?
That's correct. So basically, there would be a fee for those who participate in our current garbage and recycling program, much like there is now for the curbside cleanup. And that would cover some of those elements. For the drop-off event, we do have some financial resources from Hennepin County and other places that would allow us to offer that type of an event to everybody, with the potential for there being some smaller fees for items like electronics and some of those things, which may be a little more costly for us to dispose of. So in both cases, we think that we can bring that cost that we are charging folks now for the curbside cleanup down a little bit, and again, allow multifamily dwelling residents to participate in some elements of the program.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, that you anticipate that those of us who have the weekly garbage and recycling at our curb, the fee will go down a little bit. That's what I heard you say?
That's what we believe at this point in time. We're still kind of working through some of the final program costs, because there's some elements where we have done some research and we've gotten some ideas, but we don't have a final bid from vendors yet. And we also are kind of taking a look at sort of what we've learned from other cities in terms of the cost for doing the drop-off events, which we think we're pretty solid on. But even with kind of from what we know right now, we believe that we can probably bring that program cost down a little bit for residents in our current garbage and recycling program.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Hi, this is Lori. I have a question. Does this have any impact on the Hennepin County Recycling Center in Bloomington?
No, that center is operated by Hennepin County directly, so that will continue to be available and accept the same types of items that are accepted now.
Thank you.
Those are great questions. Great clarifying questions.
Yes.
Are there other questions from folks to clarify? Okay. I think, we'll move into this question, but I think I will go back to that one screen just so people can see that while they're asking those questions. But just as a reminder here, we're going to open this up for people to, share their reactions and their comments, any suggestions you might have. And again, I'll limit that time frame to 2 minutes for folks. But we do want to hear what you have to contribute, what you think of the proposal that staff is bringing to the Sustainability Commission and also the City Council. And so I'll go ahead and open that time right now for people to share. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Hi, this is Kent Bolson, and I first of all just want to start out by saying thank you because I feel like this process has really been an open process and it's been an opportunity for some real communication and feedback from the community. And I feel like the new proposal really shows a genuine reaction to the feedback that came from the original proposal. So I'm very thankful for what I see in that, and I'm very supportive of the new proposal. So I want to start with that. But I see, and when we look at this, sort of two lanes, two viewpoints, sort of a bifurcation or something, where the city has come at this originally, at least, from the view of a bulky items management program. And the community has looked at this as a city cleanup and rummaging program. And the original proposal acknowledged that and sort of had two pieces, but it didn't really make everybody happy. So, you got those two sides. And I think the current proposal actually addresses both sides better, but it doesn't communicate the two sides as well. The original proposal really said A and B. This is bulky items, this is rummaging, right? And the new proposal blends them together. It addresses them both, but it doesn't communicate them well. So my only suggestion at this point is, as we move forward, I think this new proposal looks really promising, but communication is the key. And I really think that proposing the swap events, the monthly curbside pickup, as those kind of things as a replacement for the rummaging, and proposing the semi-annual bulk pickup as sort of a replacement for the bulk items, and really selling it as two different programs might actually get a lot more community engagement and bring a lot of people in line with your goals, while still essentially keeping exactly what you proposed. And the only other thing is, to somewhere along this way, I think there needs to be a little more communication, because I don't think people understand the difference between what goes to landfill and what goes to sort of that energy replacement program where our trash goes. I don't think people understand that a lot of their trash gets turned into electricity. And so my only real serious input is the communication plan is probably the key to people really getting excited about this.
Great. Thanks, Kent, for those comments.
Hi, this is Lona D'Alessandro. Following comment. Thank you. I agree with Kent. Thank you very much for putting this together. I think you all have done a great job here. One of the questions I have that I didn't see addressed is what you expect the benefit to be. In other words, can you measure the reduction in landfill? Can you measure the reduction in waste in general? Like, what are your targets in terms of impact, so that we know how the unsustainability of our current system becomes more sustainable as a result of this recommendation? I don't know if you have any of that, but I would recommend that we try to communicate that as well, because just saying something is unsustainable, which I mean, as obvious that it is, doesn't help us if we don't know how this proposal changes that trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Laura, do you want to speak to that at all, or?
Sure. Yeah, we did. I wasn't sure if we wanted to just take the feedback, but we did have more slides. We didn't share everything today, but as we developed the updated proposals, we have done our own modeling and estimations on the amount of material we can likely recycle and reuse, and the reduction in landfilling and increase in that waste to energy that would likely occur from this new proposal. So we are estimating that we'll see a reduction in the amount landfilled, and the increase in the amount recycled and reused more than doubles. So we do have really great baseline data right now with our current curbside cleanup program, and in any options that we do move forward with, we'll be able to measure what results out of that, and really have some good goals for how we can continue to meet that, and maybe make some tweaks if we're finding that we haven't met it like our estimations thought. But based on what we have studied and what we're estimating, we do have some real numbers to back up the recommendations. We appreciate that feedback, that it'll be helpful to maybe share some of those real recommendations with the community as we bring this forward.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to know that I should have assumed you all did the work. You're great about that kind of thing. I just think it would be good as part of your communication plan. Yeah, thank you.
Other comments that attendees have? Please feel free to unmute yourself and share.
Just a curiosity, I know one of the things that had been mentioned was the carbon footprint of the vehicles used for curbside cleanup. Has there been an estimate of the carbon footprint for the personal vehicles used to bring things over the recycle center, including potential wait times and idling and things like that?
Laura, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, we also did look at the vehicle miles traveled in our current curbside cleanup program. So to the best of our ability, we do know the number of garbage trucks that are out on the road during the curbside cleanup, the number of trucks that are used to pick up the appliances and brush, and kind of what those emissions are, and the number of trips they do to the landfill and different recycling centers. So by changing that to an every other year program, that alone is a really big reduction in the vehicle miles traveled, because those garbage trucks are really large emitters of the greenhouse gases. We, of course, don't know the exact number of people that are out rummaging, but we did build into our model an estimation of the number of vehicles that might be rummaging during the curbside cleanup and what those emissions are, as well as looking at an estimation of how many people we thought might attend a drop-off event and how long they might be idling in line. So again, I think in our in some of this information, we can share this more detailed analysis on the Let's Talk Bloomington page. But our current program, we're estimating that it's about 62 tons of carbon dioxide that's emitted. And in this new proposal, it's 44 tons that would be emitted. So we do think that there will be a real measurable decrease in the emissions from those vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
These are great questions that people have. Been looking at the information. More comments from folks?
I think specifically, Barb, if I might ask, the monthly curbside pickup of items will be new. And as we're developing that, we would also really love to hear any feedback specifically on that element of the program as we're developing that piece. Do people think that once a month is something that they would use? Or would every other month be a better fit? Or more frequently would be another option as well.
And you're looking for that feedback now, Laura?
Sure, if people want to provide more specific feedback, that would be great.
Is this something we could try as a pilot, maybe on a quarterly basis, and see if that worked, or people wanted it more often? I mean, I really like the elements you've got here, and several of the comments I already made kind of captured what I was thinking too. So probably the only way would be to just try it out and for a year and see how it goes and how the costs are going to run. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, the frequency of that service is something that we've kind of debated about a little bit. Some of the vendors who we've talked to like the possibility of having that as a regular part of their work rotation. And so that's why we've considered doing it monthly. But I think we're going to need to try that out and see how that works with people.
Yeah, I think it would also maybe depend on how the scheduling aspect of that works. If it's something that people would need to create an appointment or schedule a pickup, that might be different than if it's just, you know, everyone put out your items on a certain day of the month. I'm not sure if that would make it more people participate or less. Either way, necessarily. Monthly does seem like an awesome benefit, but could potentially also be too frequent and then kind of maybe negate the benefit of having fewer trucks on the road. So I agree. I think a pilot or maybe adjusting frequency as needed after it's rolled out could be a good way to approach it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it gets a little tricky because we're starting to divide the things that come out of our home into all these categories. We have trash and we have recycling and we have compost and we have yard waste, and those definitions make a big difference in how frequent you have to deal with those things. So part of that calculation of frequency is about how do you define what is this category?
Mhm.
And to kind of tag on to that, I always like the way you put in the quarterly newsletter. I'm not remembering what that's called. When it came to curbside cleanup, you know, you listed what we could put out and what was not. And so when you start this program, it would be good if you could make some kind of chart to clarify, like a couple of the other people have commented about, that it, you know, have the title to that particular aspect of the program and then list what, you know, what it goes under there. And as far as like, oh, I don't know, you know, swapping or whatever, just so you make it, keep it simple and a nice chart so people can refer back and can understand precisely what they can get rid of when. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's great. Great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo that of what the last two commenters have said too, that there is a great deal of, I think, education that will need to be done, not just on recycling, but also with the organics recycling coming up in the city about what can go in the compost, and all of the new swap events and the curbside pickup and the curbside cleanup every other year, that I think outreach to residents is going to be a really high priority in making sure that everyone feels properly educated about where things can be disposed of properly and recycled properly, to really maximize participation with everybody in the city.
Laura and Ellen, were there other questions that you would like, you know, some feedback on from this group, since we do have a smaller group here?
And Barb, this is Kim from staff as well. I just want everyone to know that the comments you've included in the chat are being included in the notes as well. So even though we're not reading them out loud, those are being included.
Great, thanks, Kim.
I guess one item of curiosity, are there particular items that people have that they found difficult to get rid of previously that they maybe want us to be aware of or make sure that are included?
I really like the sound of the curbside pickup for construction materials and like remodeling type materials. I feel like that was a frequent item that I saw out outside of people's homes during curbside cleanup, and can often be difficult to dispose of. It's usually kind of big and can sometimes be kind of specialty items that people might not want in like a buy nothing group, or if you put it on Craigslist, you might need a truck to pick it up. So having access to getting rid of, you know, those doors and the windows and trim and those things, if there is an option to have that recycled or reused, that would be really appealing to me personally.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that and say that I've seen even materials, whether that's steel or aluminum or something like that, that uh, somebody's going to rummage around and pull that stuff out on our annual pickup. But my dad's not going to go all the way up to the recycling facility in South Minneapolis to drop that stuff off. So thinking about ways to deal with some of those scrap materials that have a value that should never go to the landfill, that should never go to the energy facility, that should definitely go to recycling, but nobody knows how to get them there. That's valuable. And you know, Hennepin County helps us with that with their recycling center, and I think that's good. But figuring out how to include that in the plan and in the communication helps us to make the best use of the materials that we have in our home that we're trying to figure out what to do with.
I have two things. One, as I recall, there are items such as tires and sinks and toilets that were not allowed out for curbside pickup, and that's understandable. You would know best what those items are that people want to get rid of, but couldn't do so at that point. Perhaps if you had a way of informing some way of where they could get rid of that stuff. You know, if you have leftover tires, where do you take leftover tires? You can't do it recycling, you know, you can't do here or there. So if you could give some examples of places to take that kind of stuff would be helpful. And the other thing I noticed all along is Bloomington does not promote the Hennepin County recycling place over there off of 94th and James. And you know, if you do this, well, regardless, say I have something and I don't want to hang on to it for a year or from 1 month to the next or whatever the time frame is, you know, I think we should also include or encourage them to use the Hennepin County recycling over there. Our taxes pay for that too.
A great point, Carol. I think that goes back to our communication that we'll be sending out.
Well, and that was one piece that we did hear from people, is that oftentimes they're unaware of other options that might be available out there. And we'd like to put a little greater focus on doing more education for people about what those opportunities are.
Are there other general comments from folks that we haven't heard from yet that wish to speak this evening?
So one of the things I've been thinking about, having been on the audit, was, are there businesses that could be established to do some of the recycling, like furniture that could that looked like it was in good condition but could be reupholstered, or is there a way to hook up with something that even could provide training for people on how to do some of those things, as well as provide them jobs, and then maybe even sell something at a real minimal rate? Or I saw a lot of things that looked like they could be reused with a little care. So I don't know if there's a way to work that into the system or not, but it seemed like it'd be feasible.
As a quick to add to that, one of the organizations that we have been working with is called Better Futures, and I think they are a vendor that would respond to a bid for this monthly collection of bulky items. They are a nonprofit organization that works with people that were formerly incarcerated, and they really want to get more into the business of diverting bulky items from the waste stream and piloting what they might be able to do, including potentially reupholstering or repairing bulky items that were set out that aren't in great condition. So they have applied for, and I think just received, about a $2 million grant from the state of Minnesota for really trying to build up that business model of diverting more bulky items. So that is kind of exactly what we're hoping to do with this monthly bulky item pickup. And, you know, I think that there's maybe more opportunities in the future for more of those items to become repaired and resold if they're able to kind of build up that industry more. So we can't guarantee that they would be awarded a bid, but they were one of the vendors that we worked with in the beginning about this idea.
This is Tim. I just want to add to what Laura is talking about. You know, the thing that we would most love to see is things get reused, because that, from an environmental standpoint, is the best thing that could happen. Recycling is good, but that takes a lot of energy, and it's it's better than dumping in a landfill or probably burning it at the HERC, but it still has an environmental impact. So I know that staff has been spending a lot of time looking for organizations that have a means to take some of these things and to either repurpose them, repair them, so that they can be reused. And that will be, constantly things that we're looking for. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of organizations around, for-profit or nonprofit, that do that sort of thing. And it's kind of our hope that, between us and other cities that are trying to do the same exact thing, that there will be entrepreneurs that see the opportunity for taking things that can be reused with a little bit of work and make a business out of it. So, we're looking at a lot of different options here. And the other thing I just want to say is there are, 89,000 or, somewhere between 80 and 90,000 people that live in Bloomington. And when you think about the changes that we're making and the number of people that will impact, it's mind-boggling and terrifying. Because my experience has been is that when cities or whomever start making changes to trash collection, there are quite a few people that get uncomfortable and upset with that. And we're talking about making some very significant changes here for good reason. But as many of you have been saying, communication is going to be the key to making sure that people are informed about what's happening, why it's happening, the benefits of it. And even with that, there's still going to be a lot of people who will be unhappy, uncomfortable, whatever. So we really do appreciate all the comments tonight. because I think that even though there's not a huge number of people, there is probably a good, somewhat of a representative sample of the residents who live in Bloomington. And we will certainly take your comments to heart as we continue to work through and put the final touches on the recommendations. And then it will be all about communication, getting the word out, making sure that people understand what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, why we're doing it, and how potentially this will benefit them, and certainly how it will benefit the environment.
Yeah, and Tim, I just want to piggyback. Your connection between communication and quality is important. We look at things like where countries like China have started rejecting recycled products from the US, and they've moved to Malaysia where they just end up burning them as fires.
Or landfill.
Because we throw trash in the recycling bin. And so the communication plan sets the groundwork for the quality of the materials that we put into each of these streams, which determines how successful they are downstream. So I really appreciate that focus.
I think you can couple communication with education. Educating and communicating to the public.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for that, Tim, and then some comments there. Any last thoughts or comments here before we move into next steps? Okay. Well, if you do have any additional comments, I would just direct you to the chat box. So feel free to leave them there. Staff will, if they don't respond to it here on the call this evening, an email will be sent out with the questions and the comments back. So let me just move to the screen with next steps here. And Laura, I think you're going to go over this.
Yeah, so we wanted to share with you all what our next steps are on this proposal. We have had this on our Let's Talk Bloomington page and holding this community listening session tonight, as well as still accepting comments, via email or phone call directly to staff before we bring this back to a study session for City Council on September 13th. And that'll be presented just as an informational item for the council at that time. As we know, this is quite a change from our original recommendation to them. We will provide them with updates on our community feedback and what that new proposal is, and kind of allow them some time to think more about that before we bring it back to them a second time. We'll also return and bring this proposal back to the full Sustainability Commission then on September 21st for their approval or recommendation for that commission to then bring that forward to City Council. I said a lot of words there, and hopefully that made some sense. And then ultimately on September 27th, the Sustainability Commission's recommendation would be brought forward to City Council for full approval. And if approved at that time, staff would then continue to work on finalizing those program details for changes to be implemented in 2022. And I'm not sure if we mentioned this piece, but we would still then intend on having curbside cleanup next year in 2022 and introducing those limits in what's accepted at curbside cleanup in 2022. And then 2023 would be the first off year of the curbside cleanup program. So those are our next steps. And again, you're still welcome to share additional feedback with us. If you have more thoughts after you leave this meeting tonight, you're welcome to contact myself via email or phone, and I will share that with the Sustainability Commission and staff. And I want to just say, and on behalf of all of the staff, that we thank you guys for all of your feedback tonight. I think we're pleased to hear that it sounds like this recommendation is better received than that first recommendation, and that we have put some thought into how we can make bulky item management in Bloomington still convenient and kind of increase the recycling and reuse. And all of your feedback is really, really something that we value, and we will continue to kind of insert that into our plans moving forward.
Super. Thanks, Laura. I really appreciate everybody's participation this evening and people sharing their comments with us. It is really helpful. And as you can see, just by the earlier sessions, people's comments do help guide our actions, because we are here to listen to the community and create the best programs that we can for the community. So thank you for taking time out of your evening. We really appreciate your engagement and sharing your voice with us. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening, and thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your efforts.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for participating.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes.
Thanks to everybody.